Reinforcements? I am the reinforcements.
Ah, yes. That's the voice. Anyways, memes aside though, let us talk about Jing Yuan. General Jing Yuan is perhaps one of the most interesting characters in my opinion that we have in the Laofu. Not only because, well, he holds like a big position of power, but just because of the way that he is. He holds an immense amount of power, yet he is so lazy that I just adore that as a character. But on top of it all, just the fact that the ThunderLord has like a good amount of lore, his own design, his own story with the High Cloud Quintet, he is, I feel, one of the most intriguing characters. Because we know a lot about him, but we also don't know enough. Especially in regards of him being possibly an emanator for the Hunt, since they are one of the Arbiter Generals. Which apparently the Rainbow Arbiter was Land the Hunt. I didn't know that actually. So that's a cool little nugget of knowledge that I have learned throughout this research. But I do have to apologize because this video is coming out one day later than it should. It should be up on Saturday. And it is because I took way too long investigating about Jing Yuan and other little details, specifically from the previously mentioned that I could find so much information in certain things, but so little about others. And I want to do justice to this character, mainly because Jing Yuan mains, you all are absolute beasts. Despite everything going against you, y'all have been able to brute force the hell out of this game. In both Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, even when you guys had no support, you popped off, even despite the mid-UN, like comments and everything like that. So I really do have to applaud you, especially because y'all have been thriving so much that Jing Yuan can actually just be I believe it's the third fastest team in Memory of Chaos right now, with Hanya and Tingyun alongside with Fushuan for survivability. But that blows my mind because that is no healer, and that's also just 2 4-stars. Which usually, their 5-star supports are supposed to be better, but no, it's insane. So, yeah, with all that being said, I really do want to start into the video. And yeah, we're going to be tackling on Jing Yuan's design, especially on the 3 categories that we always go for, being gameplay, meaning anything related to his skills, abilities, ultimates, everything that has to do with combat. His flavor design, which is the opposite, everything that doesn't have to do with combat, which would include animations, idols, text messages, anything that just gives more life to the character, even like their outfit, for example, right? And last but not least is impact, how impactful they have been to the story as a whole, and how they have influenced other characters. And oh boy, I know I will have a lot to talk about him in that part. That being said though, if you do want a more detailed and thorough explanation on these categories, I heavily encourage you to go check out my video on the best designed characters in Honkai Star Rail. It is a video that actually started this series, and I am very happy that I'm able to go and investigate through all these characters and make them into this like YouTube videos that you all have been enjoying, and it has been making me happy. So thank you guys, and yeah, with that being said, let us head on and see why Jing Yuan is perfectly designed. I will admit that I genuinely had no idea where to start when talking about Jing Yuan, because there's so many different things that he brings in regards of flavor, design, impact, that like I genuinely felt a bit overwhelmed. However, after thinking about it perfectly, I am starting with all 3 of them. And why? Well, because we're going to be talking about the ThunderLord. The ThunderLord just covers all 3 bases so freaking well, because we know for a fact that he used to be a part of Teng Xiao, the previous general of the Shantou Laofu, Jing Yuan's predecessor, and I believe teacher, which I'm kind of surprised by the way, that he had the ThunderLord, because Teng Xiao is apparently known for having a blazing sword, a sword of fire. And a part of me would have liked for him to have a Fire Lord instead of a Thunderlord, but then I feel like I would have just immediately thought, haha, Ragnaros is the Fire Lord. Anyways, I'm already getting a bit distracted. And yeah, the other thing is gameplay. In gameplay wise, the ThunderLord is just a big part of the kit, and it's one of the most impactful things regarding Jing Yuan's gameplay. Being able to set up the ThunderLord, being able to watch as the ThunderLord strikes down and essentially shreds through an entire shield is so freaking incredible. But the last thing is flavor. And I will admit, this is probably like the biggest stretch, because there will be heavy biases here on my personal regard that give Jing Yuan such high value. And the reason is because his two voice actors for English and Japanese just bring me so much happiness. Let me explain. As many of you might know, Jing Yuan's Japanese voice actor is Daisuke Ono, the voice of Jotaro Kujo, the character that has stands, essentially spiritual beings that help them fight. And what does Jing Yuan have? Why, the ThunderLord. And in my mind I'm like, I know that it has nothing to do with the game, and I know that not everybody will get it, but to me, that just makes him so much better. And on the other hand, you have now Alejandro Sab, which voices Akihiko, which has the personas Polytheuses and another one that I cannot say because it is a spoiler for those that might not have played the game, and I might have spoiled a little bit there, but it's okay. The main thing is that his two personas wield the power of electricity. So therefore, I am just very happy that he plays the Thunder, that he has a ThunderLord as a literal manifestation of his being. But like covering the bases again back on to the actual ThunderLord in the actual game, because that was a bit again of like a tangent that maybe we didn't have to go in, but I wanted to go in, is the fact that Jing Yuan just has this imposing aura with it. Everybody knows of the ThunderLord, and if you didn't believe that the ThunderLord is like that big of a deal in the Zhanzhou Laofu, if you actually look in the map, I don't remember the exact way that this map is laid out, but the one that essentially lets you see like a 3D version of it, on the bottom left of the screen, you can see the ThunderLord being the face of the Laofu. Wherever the Laofu goes, first is the image of the ThunderLord. And that is just mind-boggling. There's also the fact that the ThunderLord appears in such an amazing but subtle way in Jing Yuan's splash art that makes it just feel so powerful yet ominous, and it even leads me to believe like so many like different wild theories, because in the splash art, right, you see Jing Yuan playing a game of, I do not know the name, it's not Shoji, but whatever, it's a board game of the Laofu, right? And essentially, he is in a gigantic board. And the player who is essentially using Jing Yuan as one of the pieces of the game is the ThunderLord. The ThunderLord is being seen in the perspective of what the player would be, of what Jing Yuan is seeing on the board. Now, my brain can interpret that in like many different ways, because on one hand, Jing Yuan is the general, but he's also in the combat lines, so he's able to perceive and see everything from the perspective of where soldiers are, which again is very freaking amazing. On the other hand, there's the fact that maybe the ThunderLord might be like some sort of like supervision on Jing Yuan bestowed by Lan, because we know that the power comes from Lan, but we do not know if it's his to control entirely. By that I essentially mean that the ThunderLord might still be under Jing Yuan's control, but it's still being bestowed by Lan, meaning there's always a chance that the ThunderLord might just be giving information to Lan about what Jing Yuan's doing, his plans, his tactics, and everything like that. So it wouldn't be like too wild for him to just be, so lazy and living everything to Fu Xuan. I don't know. I'm just maybe going into like a big rabbit hole that I don't need to go to, but I just kind of adore that, But yeah, well, I may not know too much in depth about who Jin Yuan is in the current moment and what he might do in the future, because all those are very speculative things. What I do know is that he used to be a part of the High Cloud Quintet, where he used to be members with Jing Liu, Dan Feng, Bai Heng, and Yanqing, which we now know as Blade. He was apparently recruited like when he was still a young boy, and he definitely was mentored by Jing Liu. On the other hand as well, apparently his sword, much like the other members of the High Cloud Quintet, had their weapons made by Yanqing, meaning that sword is actually a keepsake of his past. And I thought that that was amazing, honestly, because he could have had like a different weapon, honestly, but he chose to keep the one that was given to him by his dear friend. On top of that, actually, like another thing that I kind of was forgetting to mention about is the fact that all members of the High Cloud Quintet were apparently from different ships. And this is encompassed by Jing Liu being part of the, I'm about to butcher all these, by the way, so I'm sorry, from the Shanzhou Changchun. Jing Yuan's is entirely unknown. We do not know where his original ship is, despite him now being the general of the Shanzhou Laofu. The representative of the Laofu was Dan Feng. Bai Heng was part of the Yaoxing, and Yanqing, despite not being a person from the Laofu, he was a short-life species that lived in the Shanzhou Zuming. And essentially that just covers most of the ships. But yeah, the High Cloud Quintet was a big part of his life, was an important moment of his life. And I like how they show how meaningful they were to Jin Yuan during Jing Liu's story quest. And they say this mostly because, as we know, Jin Yuan is the general of the Shanzhou Laofu, yet he lets a lot of things slide for Jing Liu, for Dan Feng, for Blade. He doesn't want to get them in trouble because he knows that they have gone through so much shit, especially after the loss of Bai Heng. He knows how awful it was to have Dan Heng become a prisoner and being forced into his new life without knowing what he needed to be atoning for. He knows how hard it is for Blade to essentially be living in death constantly and just not being able to escape it. And he knows how hard it was not only to have to strike down in the past his master, but also seeing her still be afflicted with marriage struck and knowing he cannot help her in any way, shape, or form. And I do like how, even though I know Jing Liu planned it all, he still let a lot of things slide in order to make it so that all four of them would be able to meet up in, a Scale Gorge Waterscape. I almost forgot the name for a second. And they all got to hang out, they all got to drink there, and they all got to share another moment with each other together, which I feel like it was very wholesome and such a nice addition to add. And this is honestly with the High Cloud Quintet only having been formed for a little less than 100 years, if I recall correctly. And mind you, yes, 100 years would normally be a lot of time. Do take into account all these people are long life species. To them, that frame of time is very quickly passing by. It doesn't affect them that much. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that the time that they spent isn't valuable or it isn't treasured, because it is not about the amount of time you spend with someone, it is about the quality of said time and what you do with it. During that entire 100 years, they formed some amazing and wonderful connections that were essentially irreplaceable to them, but they all treasured them. That's why they all ended up wanting to go back to where they promised they would be at Scalegorge Waterscape. And it just makes it all be so incredible, so wonderful. It's just, the High Cloud Quintet was just so good to further Jing Yuan, not only as a person, but also just as a character. And that makes me happy, you know? Jing Yuan has honestly gone through a lot, but it is awesome to see how, even though through it all, he was able to grow and succeed, that he's able to use these experiences to essentially become a wise old man, even though he's not really that old. And he is the mentor to Yanqing, but also he acts like the father to Yanqing. Yanqing does not have any family other than the general. He follows him around all the time, and he looks up to him a lot. And it is just so sweet seeing this bond that they have. And I feel like this is most reflected on Yanqing's own signature light cone, Sleep Like the Dead. You can see Yanqing having fallen asleep, and you can see hints of essentially Jing Yuan picking him up and taking care of him, carrying supposedly back home, or at least back to a bed, right? And what I personally adore about it is the flavor text, which essentially says the boy is still tightly grasping the sword even when fast asleep against the general's shoulder. General, I finally won. The general pauses and he suddenly realizes that compared to the boy, trying to improve every day, he himself has endured too many years and is used to stagnation. And then he follows by saying, "You will soon be better than everyone, and that will only be the beginning." That Lycon alone just reflects so much on both Yanqing and Jing Yuan, because I like how it shows how passionate Yanqing is, how any tiny little amount of improvement makes him so happy, yet Jing Yuan in his infinite life, he feels like he hasn't grown that much, that perhaps after the whole High Cloud Quintet thing, he has let himself go. So just him seeing Yanqing being able to be happy with these tiny little things lets him know that he will be better, not only than everyone else, but I feel like he was also essentially implying that he will become better than the general himself. And that just feels like such a poetic, that just feels like such poetic writing that fills my heart with so much joy and happiness. And again, just makes me adore Yanqing even more than I already do, because of how well Honkai Star Rail game developers have been writing these character stories. They've been doing an amazing job, and I appreciate them so much for it. Also, something that I had completely forgotten to add, because I just realized about this, is how flavorful this light cone is. Because what the light cone does is it gives you 30% more crit damage, and should you miss a crit, next time your character's crit rate will be increased by 32%. Essentially embodying that concept of, don't worry if you missed, next time you will get it for sure because you are practicing and you're improving. And oh my god, I just adore how amazing they have done with this game. But genuinely speaking, honestly, Jing Yuan really deserves the Father of the Year award. Because I know that we do talk a lot of shit about Yanqing. About how he gets bullied, about how he fights everybody on sight and then gets absolutely demolished. But throughout it all, you do have to admire how well Jing Yuan has been not only rooting for Yanqing, but also watching over him, making sure that he can grow, that he isn't getting, defeated by his, by whenever he fails. True, Yanqing does have a bit of an ego, but at the same time, one, it is kept in check on every defeat, but it is nice that it is not so fragile because Jing Yuan is there to make sure to cheer him up and make sure that he himself keeps growing. And honestly, it is just so nice to see that that Jing Yuan is mentioned in every single one of Yanqing's storylines. You know, those little character stories that you unlock when you level up your character. He's in every single one of them. And that just feels so freaking nice. Jing Yuan is honestly just like so freaking wholesome. And legitimately, to wrap this whole arc of his wholesomeness, the last thing I want to point out about him is the General's Diary, which I think it's such a cute little story that isn't seen too often, but just it freaking reflects how wholesome he is, and it just brings me so much happiness. The General's Diary essentially talks about the time that Jing Yuan bought a cat that he thought was a Grimalkin or something like that. I don't know how to exactly pronounce it at the top of my head, but legitimately he saw it. It was so tiny, it was adorable, it was a white little creature, and he just couldn't stop himself from purchasing the animal. And in his mind, he thought that it would only grow to be a tiny animal, and apparently it was supposed to be an extinct animal of the Shansu. It's supposed to be a species that is no longer seen. However, Jing Yuan got scammed. He was not sold a Grimalkin, but rather he was sold a big, gigantic lion. And this lion ended up growing and growing and growing to the point that he didn't tell anybody that he had the lion, right? Nobody knew of the lion except for Xingsu, his secretary. And she had to often go buy the food for this like animal to the point that she started buying so much that there was a rumor going in the Shansu that Jing Yuan was just neglecting not only his duties but his health and had succumbed to gluttony. And Jing Yuan is just like, you know what, I would rather be called gluttonous than dozing. I would rather be the glutton general than the dozing general. And I'm just like, damn, how much did they have to bully Jing Yuan for him to be like, I don't want them to call me lazy anymore. But I don't know, it does bring me happiness. However, due to the size of the animal growing too much, he felt that it was no longer appropriate to call the lion Mimi. That was the original name, I forgot to mention. But yeah, the little cat was called Mimi, but then he was like, no, this animal's a bit too big. So from now on, we shall call it the wave-treading snow lion. Between parentheses, sorry Qingsu, I'm horrible at naming. And that little like detail of his diary just is so adorable. Like I don't know, there's just something about these like awesome looking characters that when they like just show their like, I don't know, like wholesome little side or like shy side, they're like, oh, I like this, I like cute little things. Just brings me so much happiness. Because Jing Yuan looks like a freaking badass, but then now knowing that he has like this adoration for the little cat brings me happiness, and that he cares for, again, like his subordinates. He cares for Qingsu, he cares for Yanqing, he cares for everybody in the Laofu. So that is just wonderful. And kind of ironic, because I feel like it's kind of a comparison and similarity to the ThunderLord. He said, the lion is called the wave-treading snow lion, but he just refers to the lion as just Snow Lion for short. Similarly, the ThunderLord has that case, where the ThunderLord, or there's another Thunder, the Lightning Lord, is called the lightning-wielding, thunder-clapping, spirit-squashing Lord. But honestly, it's just easier to say Lightning Lord, isn't it? And honestly, we all need to respect the Lightning Lord. After all, we saw how powerful and menacing it was when we saw the fight. I feel like it's a bit of a stretch to call it a fight, but when Jing Yuan was encountering Sirius, and I just adore how well they did for him. And yeah, honestly, doing the research on Jing Yuan has been so freaking amazing and wonderful. Again, every single time I do one of these videos, it makes me so like joyful to be able to learn more about these characters, to see even in more depth how much care and attention the developers gave to every single one of them. The storytellers just popped off. Like, there's just something beautiful about telling a narrative through the game. There's like, you don't have to say everything explicitly, but being able to say a lot of implicit things just through how a character is what makes all these stand out, is what makes me want to be invested in them, and what essentially has led me to want to continue this series. I'm very happy to be able to continue the series and look into the characters, and I'm glad to see that there's like a good amount of people that are also enjoying when I'm like pointing out this small little facts and trivias. Which also reminds me, one quick thing that I didn't know where to put in this video is the general's clothes. And it is the fact that these clothes look so similar to a Cloud Knight's, where you can associate it with the Cloud Knights, but they also look so different that you know he's not a regular Cloud Knight, that he's like the general of them all. Also, the lion, not harm, the arm guard that he has is so amazing, and it just fills me with so much happiness, because I want to say that that is just a tribute to his own lines that he has had in the past. And yeah, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching this video. I really do appreciate all the support, all the kind words, and just how you all have been liking these little explorations of the characters. I know that sometimes these get very messy, and I do want to try to improve my scripting better. I'm not the best writer, and I feel like I can get a bit overwhelmed, but I am gonna try to pace myself better for future videos. So apologies if this one also seemed a little bit too all over the place, but I don't know, there's a joy in these videos, and I do want to improve them so that I can share what I've been adoring about Honkai Star Rail with you all. And yeah, if you have not, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe. It's free, it only takes a second, and it helps out the channel a lot. This community has filled me with so much happiness. And honestly, if at any point you feel that my video quality is starting to drop, or you just don't feel like I am your sort of content creator, then you're more than welcome to unsubscribe whenever you feel like it. So with all that being said, I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your days, nights, morning, whatever time zone you're in. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.